All right, so Dan's truck, the story with Dan's truck. 97 to 03 Supercrew, 4-door Ford. This thing had a pretty solid history. I'm trying to kind of figure out where to lean into this thing. I think I need that other bar on too, you know what I'm saying? Get this thing popping. Brady Mellon had this thing a while back. There used to be this video of it, and I don't know if we can find it, but there was this video of it in a warehouse. I think it was, I don't know if it was Missoula's shop. I don't know whose shop it was. Don't hold me to that. But it was a forklift, like an OG forklift video, and there was dudes inside, and they had the thing like all like this, and then they clink and dropped it. And it had, at that stage, it was a 5.4 modular Ford motor with a like Harley Davidson or Lightning blower. So all the powertrain was the same, the drivetrain was the same. It's always been a two-wheel drive truck. But what it had, it had like a back half, so there was no rear frame rails. And, you know, coilover bypass, I think it might have just been a coilover then. But the like back half, it didn't have a cage. That's what I'm getting to. It didn't have any interior cage. It just had like these door bars that kind of, it came from, like if this is the rear of the truck, the structure went through and then to the end of the cab, and then like the door bars kind of tied in. And I see what they did there. They wanted to try to get rigidity and structure while not like going full kill on a cage. The kit, it had the lowers and the uprights. It did not have the upper arms, which Dan machined. Dan owns a CNC machine shop. So of course he's gonna build some of those. This is a old Velocity kit. I'm trying to think of when those like were popping. I think it was 2001 to 2003 area. And I think the things were like hand cut then. I know Wes was part of that, but they were like big boxed, gnarly kits. Kevin at HM had his kit, and then there was like a Velocity kit. And like, it's very distinct when I look at them, and the styling was, I mean, they were sick back in the day, especially like for broed out kids like me. The Velocity kit and the H&M kit were like the shit. Like that shit's sick. So this has an OG kit on it. Doesn't cycle that much. It's 16 3/4. Coilover bypass, no bump. But before we go there, this truck, like why this truck's special to me, and it's one of the first trucks we haven't, you know, been at this for very long, but Dan hit me up to do work on this thing. He had Mike Robinson, Mike Rob Fab, who works at Mason now and is maybe the best TIG welder there is, working on this thing when he was at Missoula. When it was at Chris's shop, they did a full cage to it. They did numerous modifications to the back, beautiful sheet metal like stuff in the cab. Obviously the bumper, the rear shock mount additions, the front shock mounts. They did a lot of work, and then it went and it sat in Dan's shop under a cover. You know, like Mike went to Mason and kind of went and did his own thing, and it just wasn't in the books for him to like continue working on it at that point. So around that time frame, let's say that was 2013 or so. And then, you know, when he hit me up, my best friend Trace had, he died, and I went and I spoke at his service, and it was like a big deal for me, and he was my childhood every day, like, can Trace come play? Friend. So I went to the service, I spoke there, and then I went to Dan's shop, and he had this thing under the cover, and it was the first like handshake, like, you know, can you do X amount of work to it, blah, 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 agreed on our financial end of that thing. And I shook hands with him, and it was like my first project. I got in the truck, and I was like, wow, like that, like I'm gonna be able to do this. This is the first guy that's like gonna trust me to do work on his truck and you know, get this business going. And so that's why this thing's so special. We'll talk about the work that I've done in a second, but you know, working on it pretty diligently, doing all the front modifications and additions, and then COVID, all the bullshit kind of fell off. Truck slept here for a while, and then Dan got, you know, he's back. Let's finish this thing, blah, blah. And then on my end, I'm busy as shit, and I'm not able to get to it. And so now finally we're in this last push with it to get all the fabrication done. Dan is going to do the finish work, all the wiring, the plumbing, all the stuff. So really we're just finishing out the big chunks of fabrication on it. So the stuff on the ticket list for Dan, like right off the bat, swing steer. It had like a standard steering box. These trucks come with a steering box, but they have, it's weird. It goes pitman arm and then like a center link to a idler arm. And it's just a sketchy system. There was crazy bump steer, maybe 1.5 inches to 1.25 inches of toe in at droop, like just boop, you know. So part of that was put swing steer on, mount a 4-bolt box, ram assist, and then cut off the steering knuckles and eliminate the bump steer. And it worked. We got it to go. I mean, the kit itself cycles 16 3/4 of travel, just bump strapped. And it is what it is, but it cycles clean. There's no bump steer, 0, it's gone. And that took a lot of time. And we had kind of a blank canvas. I got the swingers and the center link from Kevin and the pitman arm from Kevin at HM. He was kind enough to let me have the parts, and then I just welded them under our roof. So I got all that stuff installed, mounted the box where we could. There was a lot of modifications that needed to be made because the kit that Kevin sells, the swing steer, it doesn't work with the stock 5.4 motor placement. So I had to make some sacrifices and some adjustments to get the swingers and the center link and everything to clear. And it does now. But you know, back to having an open canvas, like knowing that I can cut the steering knuckles off of the uprights and position them where it's in favor for everything working was the benefit to that. So it worked. So I'm gonna get that going. That was the main thing on the list. Add lights to the front, add a condenser for the air conditionings. He's going to be running 2 air conditioning units, mount the air conditioning units, and then the big ticket was a dash and an instrument panel and a center console. So we're going to kind of get into those and cover those, but this is, it's been a big, like the dash project itself has been like a big thing because Dan he's a machinist at heart, and he's very particular, and he has an eye for things, and he can sight things, and it's really, it's been a good experience, but it's like we've put a lot of efforts into like having this dash like square and level and proportioned. And I'll get into that process in a second, but I'm gonna grab a camera and kind of go through the details of what we did up front. All right, so something you notice right off the bat, like obviously Dan did all the upright and the velocity, or he did the upper arm and the velocity upright, and then you can see like back in the day, pocketed lower arms where the shocks are recessed was like a rare thing. So these are the big juicy arms and big juicy uprights. You can see like there's a nut register, a bolt register in there, but they're large. So well, let's cover this first. So this is the modification we made to the existing like Mike Robb Fab stuff. Like all that engine cage there is all Mike Robb and beautiful. Like you can see the attention to detail. I think I'm gonna open the hood really quick. Okay. So we got the hood off. I always appreciated the work on this thing because it's Mike Robb stuff, and he's always been meticulous and very detail oriented, and it's got really good design, but you can see like there's very minute details. Everything is like very well constructed. It's just gorgeous fab work. So again, all this stuff Mike Robb did when he was at Chris Missoula's. I did standoff, so I just mounted the condenser, but you can see like his little details, like little box areas, and just it's all good stuff. So did the cage, ran it out to the front, and then what I ended up doing is just we did the lights, made the bumper was here, so that original push bar was here, and then we made like an additional push bar, just like machine bosses. with LP9 Baja Designs lights on it. And then the big chunks were the box. So I have this rag here just to hold the reservoir, but this is all plate I added to reinforce. It's just like an overlay. And then obviously the pickup points, it's a 3-bolt box. It's still a factory Ford box. It's got like a big boxed steel chunk. It's kind of dusty, but you'll see the boxes in there. The steering shaft's all plumbed and done. Let's get under here. You see the box here, and then you can see like the pitman arm. Big fabricated pitman arm we welded in-house. The swingers we welded in-house. Center link out to the tie rods. Little drag link guy. And then provisions for the ram assist, which are kind of hanging off right here with like a nice overlay. So got all that stuff done. Like I said, we did the knuckles. This is sandblasted just because I came back. I actually built this portion of the knuckle with the powder coated, like I just sanded the powder coat off. And then we went back and re-welded some stuff that was like questionable. Added some overlays down here, like on the bolt returns. So that's why it has like sandblast, just because I kind of did a 2-stage on here. We should have just sandblasted or media blasted this stuff from the start, but that just wasn't the way the cookie crumbled. So it is what it is. And then sheet metal work on the firewall. So this is just for up travel and tire clearance for the 39s. I just wanted to kind of just kept it radiused and not too angular. Sometimes when you add a bunch of brakes into this stuff, it doesn't flow with the factory sheet metal that's in the vehicle. And then just a couple ribs here. So that's just to kind of add stiffening, well, add rigidity and kind of carry on the style of some of the sheet metal here. So we covered that stuff, did the steering, added the condenser for the air conditioning, which I think you should run 2 now that I kind of know a little more about the air conditioning systems, and especially like with vintage air. If you're going to run multiple systems, it's a must to run 2 condensers. You can run the same compressor on your engine and your accessory system, but you want to have 2 condensers and 2 air dryers. If you don't have that on a big full size, it's just not going to cool the same. So the other stuff, like the mic stuff, you can see there's existing back half in here. This Plymouth tube, like the stuff you see with all the writing on it, especially you'll see it here. Like this is old Plymouth tube, and I used to love it. I'd like build stuff strategically where it would say 4130 on it. Like you can see here, it has the 4130. So that's just older stuff, but what you can see is like the structure goes through here, and then that big door bar, that was all part of like the existing chassis. And then Mike added like all of the upper cage portions and drew it out through the front of the truck and drew it all down. And he also did these, which are long-standing, beautiful shock mounts. Just the way that's all coordinated. I think what was going on is there was a coilover mount here, and he took what was there, and just like anybody that can kind of practice good design and problem solving, he added the bypass mount and added the structure like where it just ties in and it all flows as one. So we have a couple more things to do back here. There's a couple tubes that are almost missing in this back half, like in the part you can't see. We're gonna figure out the seats, but the biggest ticket was the instrument panel on the dash. The instrument panel on the dash was a process. And with processes like this, I learned when I was going to Art Center about visual communication, or VisCom. And what that means, like just layman's terms, is it means visual communication as far as like being able to visually communicate a concept, a design, a shape. I do it with my guys almost daily, where they're like, well, what? Do it with my guys almost daily. That's tricky stuff, huh? Anyways, I'll sketch something because I'll have an idea in my head, and especially like with a client, if you say, hey, I'm just gonna build it like this, and I'm gonna do it shapes like this and that, and that's that, then they don't really have an understanding of what that's gonna look like. And so visual communication has been like this staple that I use with my clients and with my employees, where like circling back to my employees, like if I want like a tab or something to look a certain way, I can just sketch it on a piece of paper really quick in 3D where it's understandable to anyone. And it's not just like a sketch that only I get. It's a decent perspective drawing that communicates the concept or idea that I'm trying to translate. And the best part about visual communication is you don't have to speak a certain language or anything like that, because you're putting it down on paper into a surface and a shape that people can understand. And I live by that stuff, and I'm gonna just keep using it as much as I can. So what we did with Dan is we got a dash together. This one's a little folded. I'm gonna give it a little pre-fold here. We got a dash together. Like I started doing concept drawings, some of them in detail, like this highlights the center stack. This is a pretty good overall. You know, and then we started doing some center console stuff. And also like another view. So this I was kind of going through, and we're documenting this whole dash build on the Fab Diaries too. So we'll be like walking through the instructional of the internal construction and the process of doing that. But this is my initial ideation for where I wanted to go with the shapes and working with Dan back and forth, you know, what looks good, what he wants. And so when we go to look at the dash, you'll be able to start seeing, like, the initial idea was to do wrap around, like, so steel construction. This lives in the truck, wraps around the wiper cowl, and comes down on the sides of the A-pillar on each side. That's our main shape, and that was going to be symmetrical. So like per side, it's the exact same. The only thing that's not the same is our door panels. Driver side is different from passenger side. Like most vehicles, the door panels are different like that because the controls and the instrumentation are all on the driver's side. So I did adapt the shapes to the door panel. So when you close the door panel, or you close the door panel and the dash, they fit up perfectly. So we wanted to do a big stack that has like a cowl, and then it wraps around. You can kind of see some of the shape of the cowl, and this is where our GPS would be. And then our AC vents, which will be like on a high angle, and they'll be Frenched in. So they're not there yet, but I have gotten most of this shape. I've gotten our bottom tier where our controls are gonna be. I've gotten our GPS pocket. I've developed this whole shape, the outriggers that are going to be welded in. They're just tacked in right now, and you know, they come out on each side. So this whole thing's going to be upholstered. I'm building it for that too, but the pods, if you will, are going to be removable, and that's why you see with my drawing, it kind of shows like a return that I added with Sharpie in here with like fastener locations. So these pods can come out. You can reach around. You can reach into the backside of this thing and you know, mount the GPS, mount the controls, so everything is seamless. Like one of the things with this, and we're gonna like touch on this again before it leaves, but one of the things Dan is particular about is like no exposed fasteners, no fender washers, no small pieces of hardware, no bullshit on the dash, just clean, seamless. Everything is thoughtfully fixtured in a way where you don't see the hardware. So I've got the pods constructed. This is kind of just a open wasteland when we go look at it. I think we need to break it up with like radio controls. I kind of had a detail of that, like some kind of, you know, gouge there where we can recess controls just to break up that shape so it's not just one big Serengeti plane. And then what I've started on now too is the Holley display. And with that, we'll go over and look at it. But that's where I'm at now. And the real hard part with this that I'm facing is I've like gotten pretty far with figuring out how to make shapes out of like sheet metal and join sheet metal and make surfaces with that. But where I'm really getting hung up and it's presenting a challenge is like I don't know how to actually like do metal forming. And it's not, oh, it's a little insect, yeah. Little flying object thing.
No, it's like wind.
Ooh, dark arts, huh? So that's like a thing in my life that I want to, I haven't got into, and I'm gonna conquer that. I want to be able to like form metal and metal form and like make like fenders and use big tooling for that. And I've gotten so far with joining edges and blending and sanding, but I'm just not content. I have shapes and concepts and like surfaces that I'd like to create that I'm limited by how I do things. So later in my life, I'm going to learn that, mark my words. But right now, getting like that overhang or the hood of this display, it's not aggressive like this. It's just a bulge, if you will. And that's something I'm really kind of evaluating the execution on. So let's go check out the dash. I'm gonna bring these with me just in case. Before we go into this stuff, I'll try to find some pictures, but Dan's idea, go on to sit in here and really get a feel for this, because this is his Prerunner. Like he's not going to build another one. He's not going to like just sell it. And this is his like special truck. And what his idea was, he's like, I see this stuff on the drawings, I see the sketches, I understand the shape, but I want to be able to like sit in the truck and like feel out like the actual dimensions and the surfaces. And mind you, like not everyone is this particular. A lot of people just throw the dash together and cool, looks good, blah, blah, blah. This is different. And it's a real process. And I think the end result is going to show that. But Dan's idea was like 3/16 shows up with McMaster like tubes of 6 foot lengths of 3/16 piano rod. And we skinned like this whole thing. So made like runners all the way across where the proportions are going to be. Like I hand rolled it, then tacked it. We sat in this thing for 2 sessions of 8 hours to get everything where when he was sitting here, everything felt right. And what that did for me is it gave me like a really good foundation to build off of and like skin off of. And as long as I was careful, like I didn't just build directly on top of the piano rod, because that would upset the dimensions, you know, 3/16. So I made really good efforts to keep everything constrained to what we were basing like all the surfaces off of. Like we laid out the center stack where this width should be, the height of it, where the crack in this should be, like crack that thing over. Did the same thing with the display, like talked about how sunken it's gonna be, how low it's gonna be, how you're gonna see it through the steering wheel, your cone of vision, like went through it. And I kept a couple pieces because it was like this process building this thing where slowly I'd eliminate, like I thought about this thing for months before I did it. We're like, how am I gonna, I'd go to sleep at night. Like, what am I gonna do to execute this where I'm gonna be able to tailor the final presentation to like our original layout? And it was a process, but I got it. And these are like pieces from the center stack that I kept and I'm probably going to keep them in my shit drawer of my toolbox just to have as like, oh, I remember that, blah, blah, blah. So I have a couple, I have a couple of these here. Like that was, this feature here was actually that tray surface down there. So that was actually there. And I just slowly like cut them out as I needed to, like where I could get to them and they could be removed, and I kept the other stuff, and I made sure I didn't like cut something before I didn't need it. I haven't opened the door yet just because something I really like with this, and it worked out, is we kind of like made the call, like what do we do with the door panel to dash transition. And with like Matt Atkins Supercrew, we did it came here and we did the door panels. He already had a dash that he built, which is super cool, like it's a badass truck, but we wanted to try to tailor the door panels to the actual dash. So it was a whole different thing because we were building custom door panels. But this one, we made that executive decision to just, it almost like when you open the door, it looks weird. but when you close it, it's like encapsulating, like it just, everything flows really nice. And this thing's got like a radius here, and then it bows here, and it does like several different shape changes. And then all of this has to constrain to our profile of what's translating through the rest of the dash. So like I said, the door bars are gnarly. The number one practice if you're building a vehicle and you can get away with it is do not put the door bars in until you are done working in the middle of the vehicle or doing the dash, the center console, because getting in and out of these things or laying upside down in here and dealing with door bars is it's a collateral damage. No, that's not a good thing. It's a pain in the dick. So we're here. This is a really good thing too. Like, I've tried to keep some of the details in mind. Like, Joey, if you go right here and kind of see the plane and the surface that this is on is the same plane as the steering wheel, and it's the same plane as the display. It's the same plane. This one's a little steeper, but it's translated everywhere, and it's the same. Like with this cowl line, this is the same cowl line. So it's nice to try to get a couple hits of like consistency and symmetry where you can, because then like in the end result, your eyes, might not even know, but you're like, that feels really good. Or you look at that and you can feel something viscerally that is right. And I've tried to kind of apply that with what we got going on here. So again, like same thing on this side, right? Door panel with this thing. This one wasn't as like obvious as the driver's side, because the driver's side door panel really tells a story, not the dash, but the actual door panel. But this one, we did the same thing, clocked it to all the forms that it needed, and transitioned it. But it's different per side, but you definitely don't notice when you're in the truck. And I don't even know if you really notice getting in and out. It's just something I noticed because I built the damn thing. So anyways, that movement right there, I've done over 1,000 times probably, and my legs are still strings. What we wanted to do here, come from like this angle. So I'm not going to take the display out, but it's got a Holley, like the 12-inch display. And I know they use like a weird number on it, and I'm sorry, Holley, for not knowing the details on that, but whatever. The display itself has a 3/4 inch perimeter that when it turns on, it doesn't get used. Like it's just blank display. Wahlberg. It's just black space, like a border perimeter. So what we opted for, and it was Dan's idea, is to only expose, like float the dash in there. So don't have it like just sitting on a panel, or don't have it like sitting above the surface of the dash. Like have it recessed in like a display, just like an OEM vehicle, where you have like your gauge cluster that's like back behind a cowl. It's the same concept, and that's what we've kind of tried to do here, is simplify. It's really easy to build a dash where you go big crooked screen, this, boom, 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 or just do like face plates. But really building a actual like relatively symmetrical like shape like this has taken some time, but we're getting what we want. And the same thing with this, going back to this, we wanted to just show we only wanted to expose the screen that was going to be lit or displayed. And so that's what this is. This just shows the border, and I still need to straighten this out. Like when I finalize it and weld it, I'll straighten this bottom portion out. It was just a crazy transition to get over this, but also stay flat on the back. So I just need to work that, or put like a partition back there that holds it. But we're close. This display actually mounts to the chassis and to the steering column like support tubes. So what's nice is when you unbolt this thing, there's 4 mounting locations. When you unbolt it, this whole thing comes out, and your display is just chilling, like very serviceable, and you can reach everything. Going back to this whole thing, this is all going to be a Fab Diaries episode, multi-part, especially like just building. I've taken the time to cover every aspect of constructing this thing. So the Fab Diaries is like our baby that we're working on. Joey and I are both kind of coming up with a plan with this thing that you can count on, almost like a curriculum, with some structure. Again, I don't know if I do things right or wrong or good or bad. I just would like to share and give whatever knowledge I do have of how I do things. And that's what we're gonna do with the Fab Diaries all the way. So this whole thing's been covered, so you can look forward to actually going through and watching this thing be constructed. On that note, my items left in here are this cowl, you know, slash pod. We originally started doing it like this middle cowl, all steel, coming back like towards the front of the vehicle, or just coming towards the front of the vehicle. And it wasn't really what was perceived on the drawings and what Dan was anticipating having for the shape. So I've got to kind of like recalibrate and think about how and it's like it's half my fault, because usually when I do these sketches, I try to sketch within the boundaries of what I'm capable of building with metal. And it's like I put that bulge in there. This one's pretty apparent, but you can see like there's a really smooth form that comes. And the one thing that's definitely noticeable is that's like a small Holy display versus what we have. So our real estate is way more taken up in real life than what's to scale in the drawing. But like metal forming that, I don't have like big tooling, like even an English wheel to do stuff like that. So I have to problem solve and figure out how I'm going to construct that area to the best of my abilities and not shit the bed. And it's like, it's kind of been eating away at me, and I've been stressing it a little bit, but that's my final kind of hurdle here, is finalizing that top cowl and sealing that. Doing the detail work here and doing a center console. There's going to be an air conditioning. I don't think we covered that. There's one air conditioning under this thing. So anyways, one pod's out. You can see there's like multiple mounting locations, but what that was is that was just for me to hold my shape, and I didn't want to get the spacing too wide where it would start deforming. So I'm not going to use all these holes for like a bolt. That's not going to happen. It'll just be for crucial mounting areas, and especially accessible areas where you can go under here and get that with a tool. But what I was getting at is this is like why we did this, is you can upholster this. And I've been thinking about like stitching and how the material is going to lay over. When I was at Cali Customs, I got to see a lot of the stuff they did next door at 714 Motorsports, and it was huge for me to learn about constructing an instrument panel or a dash, because I saw the process with the upholstery. So instead of just like building it and then thinking, oh, they'll just upholster it to make it look cool, there's a process that makes it easy, and it makes the material stick and works. So I've applied that to this, and that's, you know, one of the reasons this is removable. And the other reason is so you can service everything. Like you can get in here and get to everything, and then you pop that thing back on, and everything is, all the hardware is ghosted. You don't see it, and it's just like this streamlined thing. And it's the same thing we're going to do with the GPS. There's not going to be a bezel on there like you see. That thing will be hidden in here, and any controls we can get away with. But what's back here is a Gen 4 vintage air, and then there's also another unit that goes in the middle here. So that's, I have the mock-up unit right here. If you guys are doing like, you know, even if you're just doing one project and you want to just like having a mock-up engine block, Vintage Air makes mock-up air conditioning units. So this is just plastic, but all of the forms and shapes are in here, and the mounting locations are in here. So it makes life so much easier. And on top of that, if you're grinding and doing all the bullshit associated with constructing shit like this, you don't dirty up your program or mess with the wires or anything there. So it's just clean, and you swap this out for your brand new one and your clean one, and you're good to go. So 2 air conditioning units. Like I said, that's our last portion. And then I have a center console, and there's a couple little details. I'm going to send the box to Charlie. A couple details like that we'll check back in on, and this thing's out. And it's awesome for Dan, and I know he wants to take his family in it, and it's a beautiful truck. I have like a crazy attachment to these 9703 F-150s. I don't know if it's like growing up in the 90s or what it is. These were like my high school truck I envied when I was younger, and I envied this truck too. And so having it here and having the opportunity to work on it and to see it off is it's just one of those things that I'm super grateful for, and just grateful to be in a position where, you know, this can be my career and my life. And thank you guys too for support. Joey and I run this YouTube thing, and we're putting big effort into it. And any comments, they don't go unnoticed. We pay attention to stuff, and we're just trying to make this thing the best we can, and have different campaigns going on the page of different angles and stuff. So if you see something you like, you know, or you want something more of, then just let us know. And thank you guys.